Hi everyone, it's Gina K from Gina K Designs and your host of Stamp TV. And today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you a lovely card project featuring the Painted Autumn stamp set. Painted Autumn was one of last year's Autumn Stamp TV kit stamps, and this Friday we are releasing a set of dies to coordinate with it. So I thought I would show you a fun project using the stamps and the new dies. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to make this card project. First, you're going to need the Painted Autumn stamp set, and that is this one here. You can see the actual size. It's a nice big stamp set, and I'm going to use the flowers, the leaves, the stem leaves, and then I'm also going to use this greeting, "There is always something to be grateful for." I'm also going to use some of the Tim Holtz Distress Oxide inks, and the colors that I'm going to use are Fossilized Amber, Twisted Citron, Spiced Marmalade, Abandoned Coral, and Broken China. Along with those, I'm going to use some of the Distress blending tools, and I really like these with the little round sponges on them. They also have the rectangular kind, but these are really nice for the oxides. They're smaller and they're very convenient to use. I have a few handles, and then I bought a bunch of the refills for the handles, and then I'm making one refill for each of my colors. You don't have to do that. You can rinse them out, or you can use one for all of the yellows and oranges and just kind of rub off the excess. It's totally up to you. For other ink colors, I'm going to use the Gina K Designs Jelly Bean Green, the Faded Brick, and the Fresh Asparagus. And then for my greeting, I'm going to be using some of the VersaFine Onyx Black. I also have a spray bottle, and I'm using the Distress Sprayer. I like this one for the oxide ink when you're trying to get bigger water droplets, and I'll show you that in a minute. You can also use the Mini Mister if you want a very fine water droplet, but this Distress Sprayer is really nice for this kind of background I'm going to do. Then I have some of the Thermo Web tape. This is the sticky dot runner. I have some foam squares, and for cardstock, for my oxide ink part, I am using some of the Gina K Designs Artist Choice cardstock. I like this because it's a little bit more porous and it grabs the water a little bit better. And then I'm also going to use some black onyx and some of the regular Gina K Designs heavy base weight for my card base. So to begin, I'm going to do a background, and I'm going to start with the colors Fossilized Amber, Broken China, Abandoned Coral, and Twisted Citron. Then I have one blending tool for each one of these, and I'm going to start with the Abandoned Coral. And whenever you're working with blending inks or any kind of inks that you want to blend colors together, you want to make sure you go in rainbow order. You don't want to mix red and green because you're going to get a kind of a brown color. You want to kind of go with the flow of the rainbow. So I'm going to do red and then yellow into green into blue, and that's going to give me a nice blend. So I'm going to start with the Abandoned Coral. It's not actually a red, but it is in the red family. And I'm going to ink up my blending tool, and then I'm just going to blend some color across the top. And I'm not worried about those streaky lines like we normally would be with a dye ink, because this continues to reactivate each time you add more ink to it. Now I'm going to use the Fossilized Amber, and I'm going to add some of that. And then I'm going to go back with that Abandoned Coral and kind of blend them together a little bit, creating that fade. And you can see how that's kind of fading together. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the Twisted Citron. This is a really fun green. I'm going to add some of that in there. You see how you can just blend out those streaky marks or those round marks from the tool? And I'm going back with the color before it to kind of blend over the line. Just going to keep blending. And if you don't have enough color, just add a little bit more again. You can go back and grab some more of whatever you need and just go right over between them. And you're kind of creating a nice fade. Okay, and then my final color is going to be the broken china. I have all these ink pads open, but I don't know which ones I'm going to still need, so. And that I'm going to work up into that green. Then go back with some of the green and blend that again into the blue, and you can see that blend is just creating a nice fade. Go back with a little bit of the yellow in there. All right. So there's my faded background, my colors fading together. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of water. Let me just put the lids back on these real quick here and get them out of the way. All right, so now I'm going to grab my water bottle and I am going to spritz water over this. And you're going to start to see the magic of Oxide inks. You can start to see the white coming through. And to hurry it up a little bit, I'm just going to take a paper towel and just dab over that. Can you see all of that beautiful white? I just love that look. It's so pretty. It's such a neat look. And the blotchier and the weirder it is, the better. It looks beautiful all the time. All right, so I'm just wiping off the excess ink, and I'm going to let that dry for a couple minutes. So I'm just going to put that over here. And then I'm going to grab a piece of white cardstock. And now I'm going to stamp some of these flowers. So we're going to start with, let's start with the biggest flower. Actually, let me grab a different piece of cardstock. I want to use the Gina K layering weight, not the heavy base weight. Okay, so I have a block here, and I'm going to stamp this smaller of the two flowers. I'm going to start with some of the same colors that are in my background. So I'm going to use the fossilized amber. I'm also going to use the twisted citron, and then I'm going to bring in some spiced marmalade, some jelly bean green, faded brick, and some of, I said jelly bean green, this is jelly bean green, and this is fresh asparagus. All right, so I'm going to start with this smaller stamp, and I'm going to start with the fossilized amber. Now, one thing that I have done to my distress inks is I have actually dented them quite a bit because I've been so rough blending in the center. So when you're stamping up a solid stamp, you just want to make sure that you check to make sure the center of the stamp is actually inked up. And you can do that just by moving it around onto your ink, onto your stamp. Moving it around the ink pad, you'll get a good coverage then. So I'm going to stamp that. And you can see how nice and solid that stamp is. And what's really neat about the Oxide inks is you can just spray a little water on a paper towel and you can wipe the stamp clean. It doesn't need any special solvent to clean it. All right, so now I'm going to use, let me get these out of the way, I'm going to use a second stamp. So this is the solid stamp, and I'm going to use the next stamp in line, which is this one. And then when you're trying to line these up, you'll notice that there are 3 little bumps on this image. And you can see it here too. 3 little bumps that are together on one petal. You're going to line these 3 little bumps on this stamp up with the 3 little bumps on that stamp, and that will give you perfect placement. So I'm going to do that one in spiced marmalade. Again, I'm going to ink that up and just check it to make sure it looks good, and then line that up. And there's my second image. Okay, and again, I'm just going to wipe that ink off of there. Now, for the third image, I'm going to use this one. This is just a very wispy little image. And I'm going to make sure that this line on this stamp, let me point it out to you here, this line here lines up with the three little bumps. So that line with the three little bumps. And if you visit Stamp TV, I actually, on the freebies page at Stamp TV, I have a chart that shows you how to line these up, and it also has some different color combinations. So I'm going to use Faded Brick for this one, and I'm going to stamp that right there. So now let's zoom in a little bit so that you can see what this looks like. You can see how nice that looks all stamped out. All right, so we're going to do a leaf now. And let me wipe this off. The leaf I'm going to do is this series of single leaves. And I'm going to stamp those with the Twisted Citron. And that's going to pull in some of that green from my background piece. So I'm going to stamp that like that. And then I'm going to stamp my next layer using some of the fresh asparagus ink. And that's this long one. And these are pretty easy to line up, especially once you get the ink on there. So I've got some fresh asparagus here, and I'm going to line that up like that. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is a very watercolory look. So some of the whimsy in this is the little bit of offset that these are. Now here's one of the bigger leaves. I'm going to stamp that with the Twisted Citron. I'll stamp that. And then my next color for this one is going to be the Jelly Bean Green. I'm going to stamp that one, and that is just a half leaf. Let me grab this one. Here's the half leaf. I'll do that one in Jelly Bean. So that gives me a little bit of a deeper shade. And then my final leaf is going to be kind of the outline of all of this. And I'm going to use fresh asparagus for that. And so that's what the leaf looks like when it's all stamped. So let's stamp one more big flower. We didn't do the big flowers yet, so I'm going to stamp a big flower. I'm going to close up these. And I'm going to go back to the fossilized amber. And this flower is in the opposite direction of the first flower. And remember, you got to make sure that center is all filled in. All right, and we'll stamp that up here. And then grab a little water and clean that stamp off. Now we're going to do the second layer of this big stamp. And again, I'm lining up these three little humps with those three little humps. And that's going to be in Spiced Marmalade. All right. And then the final color, again, is going to be the Faded Brick. I really like the way the Oxide inks and the Gina K dye inks work together. You get beautiful blend of color there, and it's nice because the dye inks and the Oxide inks, they interact beautifully together. All right, and this one is going to go right there. There we go. Now, I did this card in a YouTube live video, and somebody had asked, can you activate the inks when you've used both Oxide and dye inks? And yes, you can, but I would recommend that you do the oxide parts first, let them dry, and then add ink on top if you don't want your dye inks to run at all. Because there is the chance that if they're a water-based ink that they're going to run a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to cut this out. Let me back out a little bit here. This is awfully close, and I'm going to grab my Big Shot. And I'm going to use one of the new dies. Let me show you what this die set looks like. It's a small die set, and it has 5 dies in it, and it will cut out all the leaves, all the flowers, and then this one will cut out this stemmy one here. And what I would recommend is when you're trying to get a real accurate cut like that, you might want to take a little bit of washi tape and just secure that down at the top and right at the bottom, just to make sure it doesn't shift at all. Even though I have the magnetic plate, I find that when it's such a delicate image like that, it really does help to just tape it down with a little washi, and you'll get a nice cut. There we go. You can see how nice that cut. So now I have a variety of flowers and leaves all cut out and ready to use, and it's time to stamp my greeting. So I am going to use my Mini Misty. I have my greeting already set up on there because I've made a few of these cards. And I just picked up this new bar magnet from My Sweet Petunia, and I really like it. It is very, very strong. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that. I'm just going to place that up here, and then I'm going to use my other magnets down here. And I want to make sure I have room, and I do. So I'm going to ink up my greeting with some VersaFine Black Onyx. And then I'm going to stamp that onto my Oxide ink background. And there we go. There is always something to be thankful for. I really like this little greeting. Okay, so now this is ready to go onto my card. And I'm going to adhere this onto a piece of the Black Onyx cardstock. So since my greeting is still a little bit wet, I'm actually going to put the tape right onto this Black Onyx piece. You can always wipe away any of that little dot adhesive that gets on there. And I'm going to layer that. I like these little 1/8 of an inch layers. Now if you're watching me on Stamp TV, all of the measurements will be right under the screen. If you're watching me on YouTube, there's a description box, and you can open up that description box by clicking on the word more or show more, and you'll be able to see all of the measurements and supplies that I used. Now this is going to go onto my card base. So I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive to the back of this, and then I'm going to put that right into the center. Now if you're doing this at home and you use VersaFine, just make sure you allow the greeting to dry a little bit, because VersaFine does take a little bit longer to dry. It's kind of a cross between a pigment ink and a dye ink, and it does take a little bit longer to dry. All right, so now I'm going to lay out my flowers. So I'm going to just kind of get an idea of where I want the first stem. I think I'll put the first stem right about here. And so I'll go ahead and tape that on right onto my Oxide ink background. Just put that here. That, maybe up a little higher. Okay. And then I'm going to use some foam squares to adhere my first flower. That one is going to go right about here, like that. Then I'm going to add a leaf. I'm going to add that leaf right about here. So I'll add a little tape to the back and add that one there. And then I'm going to add a bigger flower kind of coming down this way. So I'm going to tape a foam square onto there. And you can use bigger foam squares if you want, or you can use more foam squares if you want. I just want to make a lot of room underneath for all of my stems and leaves. And then I'm going to change the position of this one, add another foam square. This one will go over here like this. And then I'll add a leaf under there, right here. I'll add another stem. I'll bring a stem coming out from there, like that. Slide that under. And then I'll add one more leaf coming out from right under here. And tuck that under there, like that. So there's my finished card project. And you can see each background. This is one I had done earlier on my YouTube Live. You can see each background is just a little bit different. Some of the spots are bigger, like in this one. Some of them are smaller, like in this one. But no matter how they turn out, they're always beautiful. I hope you've enjoyed today's Stamp TV video. The new Painted Autumn dies are now available at GinaKDesigns.com. We also have another set of dies for another popular stamp set, the Sentimental Bouquet. So we have Sentimental Bouquet dies as well. Both are in the What's New category. Thank you so much for watching today. If you're new to my YouTube channel, I hope you'll subscribe and stay tuned to Stamp TV for more card projects. Thanks for watching.